Hello, everybody. Welcome into the latest episode of the SPYPOINT Podcast. I'm Trent Marsh. I'm your host and joined this week by Josh Pretzer, the host of Building Whitetails. Before we get into it, remind everybody to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming podcasts. And of course, you can follow us on all our social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Find us there and keep up with all the latest from SPYPOINT. So Josh, obviously a lot of our listeners probably familiar with you, not your first time on the podcast, and we get you out there pretty much every month. But for those that might not know you, how about a little bit of background, a little bit of who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, so like Trent said, Josh Pretzer, host of Building Whitetails, the land management side of the SPYPOINT spectrum. Put out a video every month called Building Whitetails on the YouTube channel. And this is year 3. This is year 3.
Yeah, we're into year 3.
Yeah, we're into year 3. Have gotten a lot of great feedback, a lot of encouragement, learned a lot along the way. So we kind of took us a little bit to find our groove, but seems like, according to the feedback from people, we're putting out what people want to see and learn, which is great. Always looking for more suggestions, ideas. But yeah, 4th generation farmer in Kansas. I run our family's row crop operation. We also got cattle.
That you love. You love.
Yeah, that thought was in my mind, which I was going to say, which I so dearly love.
Dearly love cattle.
Dearly, yeah, get it? Dad joke. So land management for wildlife was something that I've always loved to do. I've watching deer in the woods and from the combine tractor, so on and so forth, finding sheds, building stories, building habitat. It's always been a passion of mine, and every year the passion just gets, the word that comes to mind is worse. It's a blessing and a curse, because the more you get tied to it, the more of an emotional swing it gets. When a neighbor shoots a deer or a deer gets hit on the road, or like this year had one poached out of my yard. So that one was that was tough. That was really tough. But anyway, long story short, that's me in a nutshell. I like to raise corn and shoot deer.
If you're going to do a couple things, why not do those?
That's some good ones to do if you live in the Midwest.
So I guess we didn't talk about it. I missed it. I didn't know you'd had a deer poached right out of your yard.
Yeah. I was going to bed. It was about 11:30 at night. This was this end of rifle season. Our rifle season's 2 weeks here in Kansas. Actually, it's like 10 or 11 days, but basically it's 2 weeks. I think it was the second to last day of rifle season, somewhere in there. Going to bed, take my glasses off, turn the light off, put my head back on the pillow, and hear a gunshot outside. And I'm like, immediately awake and put on my glasses and my clothes in a speedily fashionably form and run outside. And sure enough, somebody shot a buck out of just across from my driveway in our field that's right here. Anyway, so long story short, that's what happened. I won't go into further details than that, but
I won't ask you to, but that
I don't want to get mad all over again.
Yeah, of the two of us, you're the happy-go-lucky one, and I'm the one that gets mad. So let's keep you happy-go-lucky.
Right. And so if I get mad, who knows where this podcast?
Yeah, it'll get sideways on us in a hurry. So let's avoid that. All right. So enough about last year. Even though you had another good year, tagged out quite a bit earlier than the year before, and kind of made quick work of hunting season 2021. But
like all of 2 hours.
Yeah, rough life.
Yeah, it's tough.
Grow corn, shoot.
Somebody's got to do it.
Repeat. Exactly.
Grow corn, shoot deer. That's what it's about. Yeah.
So we're early April now. which for most of us is really kind of getting into the beginning of where we can actually get out and start doing stuff. Obviously like some timber management and that kind of stuff is behind us a little bit, but in terms of turning over ground and getting seed in the ground, which is so much what we're doing with habitat improvement. Do you have any big plans for this year? Any areas of the farm that we've kind of gotten to know over the last few years where there's some more evolution? Obviously, we've seen a lot in the runway and some other areas of the farm. Do you have any big plans for any big changes this year, or is it just kind of keep it on the same track?
Sure. So I'm keeping the general design of the food plots the same, but I'm changing up what goes in them. Last year I did a combination of corn and beans along with green in one plot, in two plots. I've got two main plots separated by a buffer. And what I've noticed is that I used to have bucks that would skirt the food plot and they could see across the whole thing. And if they could see across the whole thing, they wouldn't commit and come into range. So I put that visual barrier there. Now bucks, virtually every single one of them that comes out has to come across and look in the other plot because they don't know if there's no does out there, bucks out there, whatever it may be. If they can't see it, their curiosity gets the best of them. So I put that vision. It's switchgrass is what it is. It's about 15 feet wide planted. It's stupid thick. It's a nightmare to get through. Like you fall your way through it. So deer are going to take the path of least resistance. So the opening I made was in my favor on my side of the field that I'm sitting on. So they come around, walk through the opening, go to the other plot. That's a rabbit trail. But in both plots, I had green and grain. This year, I'm going to do, at least for now, I think what I'm going to do is all my green in one and all my grain in the other. That way I can, if they're in the green plot, I get a shot. But if they're in the grain plot, I want to have a better shot because it's typically later season. I want them closer, wearing more clothes, things of that nature.
Right.
I want to stack the odds in my favor. So they're going to come through that opening in the grass to go out to the grain. So that's food plot wise. That's what I'm changing up. I'm planting a ton of trees. I don't have a lot of timber on my place. Kansas isn't known for timber. We do have trees, much to some people's disbelief, but we do have trees, and I'm planting a lot more. Thermal timber cover is one thing that I need a lot more of. So I'm planting swamp white oaks, sawtooth oaks. I think there's some chinkapin oaks, if I remember correctly. Some more eastern red cedars, white pines, adding a lot of those. I'm also adding a lot of fruit to my place. That was one area that I really needed to improve on was getting.
Yeah, you don't really have any native soft mast already on the place, do you at all?
No, none. We've got plums. We got sandhill plums, some wild plums, but that's the only soft mass, and that's not, that's a shrub. It's not a tree. So getting more trees of the soft mass and the fruit species out for that really a full year habitat benefit.
So the trees that you do have primarily seem like they kind of run around that kind of, I don't know if you call it a river or a creek, but kind of that low area. Are you building the buffer up around that? Or are you going out and creating some stands elsewhere, or just concentrating some of those, like the hard mast in some areas that you can take advantage of and really just building up that buffer along the water?
Right. Most of it is close to the water. I'd say all of it's within 100 yards of water, which there's not much timber in Kansas that isn't around. If there's no water, man, there's almost never trees. Right. At least in my topography. So it's all of it's going to be centered around water, because honestly, that's where most of the deer stay. It just kind of how things fall in place here, how the pieces fall in. But adding, we've got a ton of bur oaks, we've got hackberries, elms, cottonwoods, locusts, redbud, and black walnut. That's about the only trees you're going to find in our area, Kansas.
Gotcha.
I think I've only ever seen one sawtooth oak in my area of Kansas. You go further northeast, and you get into them. because they hold their leaves. I mean, the ones I planted a couple years ago are still holding their leaves, and it's, like you said, rolling to April here. So, everything else loses its leaves in October. I'm trying to add timber to my property that holds those leaves a lot later, the eastern red cedar, the swamp whites, the sawtooth, so that, come January, we still got a ton of cover from, the elements, as well as visually from the road, whatever it might be. Because this time of year, you can look out the window, you can see 500 yards across the property, and well, so can the deer.
Right. And so can poachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It just scabbed over and I picked right back at it.
I just ripped it off. No, I was sitting here trying to, after that happened, of course, naturally, I'm trying to brainstorm what on earth can I do to keep this from ever happening again. Let's see, I got to keep this people friendly. So, I was like, okay, I can bring a dozer in and build a 15-foot berm along the road, the entire length, mile and a half. I was like, okay, well, that's probably not cost friendly, but it's still not out of the picture. So,
yeah,
just build my own dike.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
that swamp white oak is one that's so we moved back around Thanksgiving, and it's a small piece, but it's a little bit of acreage and enough to maybe be able to take some deer off of. But there's about 2 acres of it that's essentially swamp. We kind of call it around here, kind of a lot of times gets called dry swamp. It's too shallow to fish but too deep to farm is essentially how it works out. And it seems like there's some water in there, but it's not so much that there's not trees growing. There's some Kentucky toffee trees in there and stuff like that. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out what can go in there to make it a little bit better for anything, whether it's ducks or turkeys or deer, whatever the case may be. And the number of things that will tolerate wet feet is pretty short. It's pretty, meadows here, dogwood, and some of the cedars will take water, but and in the oak family too, there's not a lot that can really. That's why so many of those, like you're talking about, you get in, even around here, you get into those swampy, ditchy areas, and it's cottonwood trees, and it's which suck for just 18,000 reasons. They're not good for firewood. They're terrible for everyone's allergies. Nothing really likes them. But that's what grows there. So
they take a massive amount of water. It's like, I read this study once where it was one adult cottonwood tree pulls like 3 or 500 gallons of water a day. Like it just blew my mind. It's like, how on earth? But and I my least favorite tree is a sycamore tree. I absolutely hate sycamore trees. People are like, oh, they're so beautiful. I'm like, yeah, when they're cut down. And so it because they drop these massive pie plate leaves that never break down. So you're walking to your stand through like a foot of bubble wrap is what it sounds like. So every single one of those trees I find in my place, I send to tree heaven. But it's sorry, personal vendetta is over.
No, we're turning the podcast into the Josh's catharsis hour, and it's just you getting all of your anger, everything out. You can't be in the field, you can't be planting today, so this is your therapy session. Just lay on the couch and talk
with Pretzer.
Yeah,
that's right.
I like it.
Yeah, we need to do this again in May when I'm in a tractor. It'd be the polar opposite. I'll do it for you.
Yeah, we will be there. I have no doubt.
Awesome.
So tractor season coming up. Like I said, we talked about that's the day job is farming. And I think pretty much everybody here lately, even if it's not something they do, they've kind of seen the rumbling and the talk of, with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and they're huge wheat producers and huge fertilizer producers. And even China has talked about cutting down on the urea exports, and just the cascade, the domino effect of that. I know several group, I'm in a farming community here and know several of them really well. And we've talked about it some, but obviously that's going to be affecting you as well. And you've probably already started to see some of those effects. for the habitat managers that are going to be doing the same thing, whether it's plantings or fertilizer or whatever. A, how are you trying to deal with it? And then B, how can kind of just the backyard habitat manager, what can he do to try to help mitigate some of that effect as we go into this year and moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys aren't familiar with what's going on, I mean, obviously we've got, how political can I get?
Let's keep it middle of the road. Yeah. Let's keep it family friendly.
We got massive inflation right now. We've got, excessively high fuel prices. Diesel fuel is, over $5 a gallon. So, you turn the tractor on, it costs $5 just to turn it on. What am I doing to, I guess, soften the blow? Did a lot of prepay on fertilizer. I was prepaying fertilizer at prices I had never seen before, which felt counterintuitive, felt stupid. I locked in thousands of gallons of diesel fuel at $3. You're thinking, I've never paid this much for farm fuel before. What if it goes the other way? Well, right now it looks good, thankfully. But we've got the seed increase hasn't been terribly bad. Supply of seed, pretty much all the seed in the United States is grown here in the United States, and kept here for reproduction. So, maybe the rest of the industries could take that as a learning thing. Hey, seed production is here. We all have seed. Right. Fertilizer, we get a ton of fertilizer from overseas. That's a wreck right now. Fertilizer's up. It was up another 10% this week. It's up, let's see, the average fertilizer bill was up like 280% for a year ago to date. I think it was last week, before a 10% increase. So, input costs are that way. Chemicals are at least that much. Glyphosate, Roundup is $50-$60 a gallon. Last year I paid $12.25 a gallon for it. Liberty glufosinate, people are, that's, if you can find it, it's used on Liberty beans, Extend Flex soybeans. A lot of the Enlist beans also take Liberty as well. You literally, you can't find it. If you can, it's like $90 a gallon, where it was like, I think 30 last year. But so Liberty is made, almost all of it's made in India. Their factory that made it blew up last fall. So that helped. It's, majority of our glyphosate, the Roundup, comes from China. They shut down production during the Winter Olympics. So that caused a problem, as well as just the whole supply chain thing is, obviously everyone knows by now is horrendous. Then we had that shut down because they had to do what they had to do. I'll put it that way.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
I literally saw the sensor light come on. I appreciate that. That was good.
Yeah. That's the story. That's it in a nutshell. Everything except for seed is up that much. Grain prices are historical highs. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, farmers are making so much money. Well, okay, yes, but we got to have it to pay for a 300% increase in everything we buy this year. So profit margin, farmers get a lot of crap when grain prices go up, and no one wants to talk about the last 5 years of really sucky prices.
Right.
Where farmers are making it work, but we're not making extra. I personally, I'm a capitalist. I think everyone has the right to make as much money as they want to do, as long as they do it legally and ethically correct. So, I want everybody to get a piece of the pie. I want farmers to get a piece of the pie, because without farmers, we don't have food. Without food, you die. Yeah. I mean, that's the basic human science of the circle of life in a nutshell. From a farmer's perspective.
Literally everybody else's job is easier than yours. Whether it's teachers, whether it's farmers, whatever job you do is always harder than what other people think it is. So people just see $9 corn and $14 wheat and $16 soybeans and assume that, farmers are rolling in money, and nobody's paying attention to, like I said, those input costs that are going up, and they just see that, well, now my steak that used to be $7 a pound is $14 a pound.
Right.
Who's making the money here? And like I said, I'm
packing plants.
Exactly.
Sorry.
I'm
sorry.
lucky.
That's my only jab.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough to be close enough to it to kind of see how that goes down. And even, especially on the beef side, I've got some family in Montana that, it's a working cattle ranch, and drastically, I'm in Northeast Indiana, so it's row crop territory. And we've got, there's animal production here, but not like, not the John Wayne thing. You can't, there's not a lot of farming taking place in Eastern Montana. It's just, it doesn't work. It's too high. It's too dry. It's just not going to work. Pretty much everything that gets grown there is cowpeas and milo and stuff that eventually, it's just get it high enough to bale it because there's no hay. And when there, it blew my mind. You go out there, haying season is once, we get 3 cuttings every year. Sometimes 4, if it's if it's a crazy early spring and a long fall, we'll get 4 cuttings out of a lot of fields. They get 1. And again, we'll keep it from getting too political, but so many people are so disconnected from that entire food chain, the entire food production process. And you touched on it. It's the packing plants. Really that where a lot of it is gone. And right around here we used to have a lot of hog production, and like people don't even, like, you can't just go. It used to be, let's age Trent a little bit, back in 4-H days, you just went to the hog farmer down the road and you bought a couple feeder hogs and you took them to the fair. You can't do that now. You can't even set foot on that farm because it's a closed farm. The farmer doesn't own those pigs. He's feeding those pigs for the packing plant. He owns those pigs. It's that packing plant's genetics. There's absolutely nothing that farmer does. And, luckily around here, we're starting to get back to some of the smaller producers and, a lot more of that, call it hobby farm for lack of a better term, just because of the size of it.
It's niche markets. And, I encourage everyone to, there's some amazing YouTube channels out there that show life on the farm as it really is. Just Google farming videos, a ton of them will come up, but, and that's, there's positive, negatives to social media. One of the positives is it's opened up this huge platform for people to connect to agriculture, to life on the farm, life on the ranch, to hog farms, chicken farms, whatever it might be. So they can actually get some sort of a connectivity to where their food comes from. It's absurd how many people, people that, say, and I have friends that they're, vegans. I love them to death. That's fine. You eat what you choose to eat, but I had a conversation with one. It's funny, I was watching the series Yellowstone, and they had the same conversation on Yellowstone. I love that series because it just makes me feel like my life was put into a film. But people will eat, say, like they use in their quinoa or something of that in nature, vegan food, everything's plant-based. Well, they still plow the ground, they kill off soil biology, they kill the worms, they spray the ground, they kill everything, they nuke everything to raise, a crop. Well, more stuff got killed in, the making of that product than, it took to raise 20 cows. So, it's there's, how does it, somebody who said it on Joe Rogan's podcast, it was, nothing dies an easy death in the wild, and we as humans think that we can change that. We really can't. We just move it. We move it from one side of the table to the other side of the table.
Or we mitigate it in such a way that we can, cognitive dissonance is a wonderful thing. So it's
yeah,
better. It's better if I don't
bliss.
have to see it. As long as I don't have to see it, it doesn't matter that it happens. But as long as I can convince myself it's not happening,
that cow doesn't die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on from that, so that we
did good.
We did. Well, but it's something everybody's dealing with right now. So I think it's something to touch on for sure. And that trickle down is going to be, I've already seen where, a $7 bag of 12 or 19 is on sale and they're proud of it at $15.99 now.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just crazy.
You're not going to see that go away this year.
Yeah.
You're not, guys. If you're waiting for prices to drop, I make my living in this. It's not happening this year in time. If it happens, it'll happen after it's too late to apply it. That's what'll happen. The time the fertilizer price will come down is when it's too late to top dress corn with nitrogen, or it's too late in this growing season to spray weeds or something like that. But are we going to see prices come down? Yes, we will. This exact same thing happened in 2008 as we began and basically went into a recession. Without getting extremely political, I think we're going to repeat that. Yes, I really do. I mean, it's just ebb and flow. It's happened since the beginning of time. We're going to see lower prices. Is it going to fall back to what it originally was? I don't know. If you'd have said that we'd see 99-cent gasoline, 2 years ago, back in the glory days, I would have said you're crazy, but we did. So who knows? But it is going to drop back off. It's going to level out. This isn't going to be forever,
but not fast enough to affect. Essentially what you're saying is, if you have a list of what you think you're going to need for your, whether it's food plots or your garden or whatever the case may be, bird in the hand. Even if it feels like you're overpaying, bird in the hand, and just make sure you've got it on hand before, it's kind of like the old, you don't wait until May to go buy a lawnmower, because everybody needs a lawnmower in May. So
I just got a lawnmower. Got a Facebook Marketplace for the win, man.
I saw. Is that a 60-inch Hustler? Is that what that was?
That's exactly what it is.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'm the proud dad of a good lawnmower.
Fantastic. I just figured you didn't even have the yard. I just figured it was cattle fence all the way up to the back door and
food plots.
Put it there you go. Go. Keep the clover mode down.
That's right.
So question then, do you mow, when you mow in clover, do you mow it all at once, or do you stagger it so that you've got, because I've known guys, especially like when it's a situation like there where it's basically right at the house, that they'll go through and they'll mow like 2 strips and then they'll go back a week later, and they'll just, so it's kind of in a constant succession of where it is, as opposed to letting it all get flowered and stemmy and hard and then taking it all back down. They kind of just
no, I don't. To be completely honest, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, that's me stepping in to show that dude, I don't know everything. I don't know everything at all, but I had not. Now I have mowed different plots at different times, but to be completely honest and transparent, it was because I didn't have time to do the other one. Right. It wasn't because of that, but now that you say that, I'm going to try that this year, because I've got 3 clover plots here on this place. One, I decided to just let go. I would just leave it. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to see what it does. And the other ones, they were gorgeous, are gorgeous. They're manicured to a T, and deer don't care. So, that's just the cold hard truth of
deer
it.
Don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah. Fantastic. So obviously, we talk whether it's bedding or, cover that's not necessarily bedding, or food or water, whatever the case may be. People are always, what's the quickest win? And it's not going to be the same for every property necessarily, but in terms of Josh Pretzer gets dropped on 50 acres and it's just a little bit of everything. Josh gets dropped
Yeah.
on 50 acres. What's the easiest, what's the quickest win, whether it's low input, low cost, whatever the case may be, what's the quick win for habitat improvement?
Yeah. So I thought about this one, and the quickest win that you can possibly have is figure out the location to stay out of. People don't think of that enough, but if you got 50 acres, figure out where the deer can feel the safest at, and leave them alone. Just freaking leave them alone. And because, I find it here, you'll hear me say it in all the Building Whitetails episodes, just hear it on my Instagram stuff, whatever it is. My property does not lay geographically great. It actually sucks. It lays in a very non-beneficial way to myself personally. It lays beneficially great for my neighbors. Deer pass through here, headed to the neighbors. My place is a pass through property. Naturally, it is. So I'm trying to change that to where it's a destination location that they want to stay at. One thing I've had to do in that is create a core sanctuary area. And dude, it is so hard, especially when sincerely believe one of the worst things you can do is live on your hunting proproperty, just because the temptation level to, I'm just going to walk across the creek.
You just sneak back in.
There's a raccoon that needs shot back there somewhere. I'm sure of it.
There's always a raccoon that needs shot.
Always. Always. So, but I would say to figure out the area that you need to designate to let them have their space. I mean, it'd be like if a complete stranger just walked, if you drove into your driveway and stood on your front door type thing, you don't feel threatened. If that dude just walks in and lays down on your couch,
we got problems.
Second Amendment comes to mind.
Right. Is Nebraska a castle doctrine state? I'm sure it is.
I don't know.
But might want to check into that.
So I probably should. So we, so that's kind of the analogy I have for deer. If you give them some space, to where they still feel like they have an area, they're okay. Don't give them a reason to leave. Don't give them all the reason to stay, but most of all, don't give them a reason to leave. Give them their little area. That's the number one thing. And then, from there, it's just, it goes safety, water, food, in that order, I would say. Most places don't have issue with water for the most part, for the majority of whitetail hunting. Now that, yes, there are areas where water is, deer got to travel a long ways for water. And I'm not talking to those guys necessarily. If that's the case, then, maybe water is the thing you need. But food, if you're in the Midwest, majority of whitetail hunting is in row crop states for the most part, not always. So, food is not always something that's hard to find. If you're in an area where it's all timber, then yes, that obviously applies to you. And food's something that you're going to need, and you're going to desperately need if you want to hold and retain those deer on your property. But yeah, the number one thing I would say is to give them a safe area.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I think it's getting tougher and tougher to do. And I think, I think that's part of the reason. Obviously, improved management tactics is growing a lot of bigger deer. But you'll never convince me that just even in the last 20 and 25 years, the number of big properties that I've seen broken up into smaller plots just around here, where you used to be, it's, similar situation. It wasn't where you had, 6 or 8 farmers in the county that did 2,000 to 5,000 acres a piece. You had 40 farm families that were all doing 200 to 500 acres. And there were a lot of those larger plots relative for hunting that, made it different. And obviously things have changed from the way that land is being managed to grow bigger deer and hunter education and hunter maturity and that sort of thing. But where that one buck used to live on one farm that got hunted by one family, he now has to cross 8 different hunters' properties. and every one of them's doing the same thing. Everyone's got
Yeah.
some bedding and everyone's got some food, and just the sheer number of different property owners that buck has to cover every year as he gets to be 3, 4, and 5. He still can't live on 15 acres. He just can't do it.
Right.
And when you take that 200 to 300 acre farm and you break it up into 10, 15, 20 different parcels, half of them at least are going to get hunted. So just the way the properties have been broken up, I think has really contributed to a lot more of these deer getting shot, just because they can't hide out anymore. They don't have, even though there is, there might be more people that are, have a small sanctuary on their area, but even if you've got the sanctuary that he's using, he's probably eating on somebody else's. He's tending does on somebody else's. His preferred watering place, it's that he's all over the place.
I tell people all the time, I'm totally leaving my place as long as it's after dark. I mean, that's if you can't keep a wild deer from doing what a wild deer is going to do. He's going to go. He's going to look for does. He's going to eat whatever the heck he wants to eat. He's got, if he wants to go and rub on a tree out in the middle of a hayfield, he's going to go do it. More power to him. But I want him to leave after dark, and I want him to be back before the sun comes up. That's my goal. It's not going to work every time. I have deer shot by the neighbors all the time. And dude, I want everyone to enjoy the outdoors. It really, if you're an ethical sportsman enjoying the outdoors in the way it should be enjoyed, I'm the best neighbor you could possibly have. But as every outdoorsman should try to be, and it's hard sometimes. I struggle with it with some neighbors, but if you're doing things the proper way, in regards to ethics, caring for the wildlife and natural resources, I mean, everyone needs to help everybody out. I think everyone should get a fair shot at a good whitetail, and just enjoying a hunting season and enjoying what hunting is truly about.
So, and that's really, it's a good segue into the next question I had for you. And you talk to way more people about this than I do. But so often it seems like when I talk to people about their hunting property and their habitat plan, what they're doing, they seem to go into every property with a plan that they're going to make work, as opposed to finding the right plan for their property. They, like I said, whether it's I need bedding or I need food or whatever the case may be, they're kind of going into it saying, well, I'm buying this new property and I can't wait to put food plots on it, without really going in and seeing if that's what they need. Right. Do you see guys doing that too? And then what's the best way to avoid that trap?
Yeah, I was super guilty of that. And it's so hard to not do, because we as wildlife, enthusiasts and land management people love to go out. We love to till the ground. We love to plant trees. We love to build fence and put up blinds and things of that nature. It's something that resonates deeply inside of us, and that's awesome. It's great. But I mean, we just go out in the middle of in a field and disc up 3 acres and plant a food plot and think, oh, the deer will love it. Okay, but why? Why'd you put it there? What are you planting there? What's your strategy behind it? Build off. Everything's built around sanctuary and the safety of the deer. Are you putting a food plot in an area that's bad for the bedding and the habitat and or the bedding and the timber and things of that nature? That's for the deer. Food plots are your tool to use for wildlife as well. Now you're providing for the whitetails, but I mean, I don't plant a food plot that I don't intend to hunt over, because it's everyone can agree to this. One of the best locations to kill a whitetail is over food. There's people that argue that, and that's fine. But I mean, majority of my deer I've killed have been killed over, a crop field, food plot, things of that nature, or a transition area during rut. Those are great times, but rut doesn't last as long as food does.
But they're still transitioning to food.
They're still transitioning to food. Yeah. Whether a buck is going to food or chasing a doe that's going to food, they're going to food. They're slaves of their stomach. They crave safety and they're slaves of their stomach. It's honestly as simple as that. So I plant the food plots in favor of my hunting strategy. Design the cover in such a way that it favors me. That way deer aren't bedding downwind of my hunting blind. They're bedding away from my wind where my hunting blind is. And the food is, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, positioned in a way that the deer they don't have to, but naturally, if they take the path of least resistance, which 99% of whitetails like to do, will come around in favor of me getting a shot opportunity at them.
Yeah. And people that have talked to me and even just in the last episode of the podcast, last couple episodes, it's come up, but like you're talking about, you come to grips with the fact that he's going to leave your property. You just prefer that it goes overnight.
Yep.
I'm the same way about, if I don't have bucks on camera in the summer, I don't care. I really don't.
Yeah.
If I have to choose between 3 doe groups and no bucks on camera in August, I'll take it every day of the week, because eventually he'll be there. And there's, like it or not, you've got more margin for error with a doe group than you do bucks. You still can't be stupid, but does aren't just going to up and move a mile and a half once they've got their core area.
Right.
The number of bucks that live,
they'll try to figure you out more.
Right. They'll work around.
You'll have to shoot that one doe. If she blows, she goes.
But the number of bucks that you can find once the season opens where they were while you watched them all summer is so much lower. It's just so much lower. We had on one of our properties, we had a monster deer. I sent pictures to you. We just found out here in the last few weeks that the property he came from had been, they'd come in and done a timber harvest. And while they were in there doing the timber harvest, it bugged him out. He's living a mile and a half away.
Yeah.
We didn't have a major influx of does that came from that property that didn't want to be there. They still used it, but a mature buck is not going to tolerate that. So given the choice for me, if I don't have a buck on camera until August 1st, don't care. I just really don't care, because like I said, even they're slaves to their stomachs, and you don't have to kill a hungry buck to kill a buck. You just have to be where a hungry doe is.
Right.
And that's way easier to plan around. That's way easier to make a plan for. And that's way easier to put yourself in a situation to succeed with than creating a bedroom and then trying to hold him on as small a territory as possible. Because at the end of the day, it's just not going to work.
Sure. I mean, that's, most of the people that have been following either the Building Whitetail series or me on social media will know that that's how Goalpost was killed. Goalpost was killed. I mean, I was hunting the doe group, not with the intentions of killing, but I had a lot of young does, really young does that typically come into heat late, those yearling does come into estrus later on than the mature does. So I knew that typically, these deer are going to be coming in to cycle later on, and that's where the bucks were going to be. So it was just a matter of, okay, wait. She's in heat, go, and then shot Goalpost that night. But, it's, and I SPYPOINT cameras. I can't remember exactly if it was an Evo or which camera it was. Send me the pictures of that buck.
Goalpost, you had him, he was using the runway a lot, right? Isn't that how that went down?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I got his pictures, is he had that a doe locked down over the, in the runway. And I was like, oh my gosh, because he'd pass through he stayed on the neighbors a lot. He'd pass through my place. I get a couple pictures and he'd leave. But that he was like, he was here on the next, on the latest Building Whitetails episode, I talk about that a little bit, but it's getting that intel to know what those deer are doing. And, people are trying to hunt the buck specifically. Don't hunt the buck. I mean, let's see, he gets a shot once a year. He's going to be anywhere and everywhere he can to get that shot. The does, if people just try to figure out where the buck is all the time. It's like, that's absolutely impossible to try to do for the most part. Sure, it can be done considering on the nature of the buck, if he's a homebody, but even homebody deer leave during the rut to go breed does. So if you can really hone in on your doe group, figure out what your doe groups are doing, I mean, you're going to kill more deer that way.
Yeah. And it's, goalpost was you killed him fall 2020, and I had great success fall 2020. And it was a very different but very similar situation where we had a really goofy wind. We had a southeast wind the second Saturday of November in Northeast Indiana. Not usual, but it opened up a stand location that was right on a really thick bedding area for its three doe groups use it as their core bedding area. So as soon as that was the wind, okay, we got firearms opener. I know exactly where I'm going. And a deer that we had 4 farms, about 80 acres. We had 4 cell cams on it the entire year. And the only picture we had of this buck was 4 days before I killed him. 4 days. Yeah. He didn't live there. He lived close. Right. I think we figured out where he lived was about between a quarter and a half mile away. And then when everybody started coming in, we bow hunt. They don't bow hunt. They came in and started getting ready for the gun opener, and they pushed him off, and he was going to end up over there anyway. But I mean, he read the script. He came in, he went to the downwind side of that bedding area. He actually picked me off in the tree, but it was just dark enough still that he couldn't tell what I was. But I put a bullet in at 25. I mean, it was bow range, 25 yards, and nothing was going to stop him from checking that bedding area. Like I said, he's got 1 shot, and he'll be hopefully finished up at the taxidermist here before too long, but I've got him about a half inch under 180. We didn't know that deer was there. Wow. We had a couple 130s and a couple 140s that I'd have been absolute, and a really mangled up weird like 6 that was, I'd have shot him in a heartbeat because I love the freaks. But you'll hear me say it over and over, and it's been in blogs that I've written, and just seems like every podcast interview I do. So many people get caught up hunting ghosts. They get a picture of a deer on September 18th, and then they marry themselves to that deer. That they end up making bad hunting decisions trying to chase that deer that it wasn't going to be in the cards. Yeah. All right. So we had solicited some questions from social media since we knew we were going to be doing the podcast with you, and wanted to get some questions. So we'll kind of rapid fire through these and try to get some quick answers as much as possible, and just kind of power through real quick. And we'll start off with another timely one. How do you know what minerals or salt, which I know is a trigger word for you, work the best? Do you get the soil tested to see what the soil is deficient in? And this person said they just can't get blacktails to come into salt, but I don't know that salt is your answer anyway. So how do you respond to that?
Right. So I had this conversation with a friend. I think it was 2 days ago. It doesn't. I've got farms on heavy clay soil. I've got farms on black gummy gumbo dirt. There are areas there. I mean, it might, particularly here where the Building Whitetail series is filmed, put mineral out, and it doesn't get used very, very well. I'm always trying different minerals from different companies. I'm always trying different food plot seeds from different companies. I don't, someone can claim to have the greatest whatever plot it might be. I'm never going to believe that. I'm not going to believe it until I try it on my own place. And maybe it's the best for them. Maybe it is the best for them. I don't know. If it is, awesome. That's great. But I mean, last year I had 3 different food plot companies, fall blends planted in my food plots to see, hey, did the deer react to one better than the other? Did one withstand the drought a little bit better than the other one? So I've always got that going on. It upsets some people. They don't care. Some people like it. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I've got, like this area here, deer don't eat mineral hardly at all. It doesn't matter what company's mineral I put out, what blend, whatever it is, straight salt. They just don't really mess with it. You go 10 miles down the road and you get a pickup truck stuck in the crater that they've dug where the mineral is at. So I have not tested the soil in regards to deficiencies regarding mineral, but what mineral for deer, I do a ton of soil testing on the agricultural side of things, and I've thought of that and trying to move nutrients from the soil. That's all a plant is. It's think of it as I tell people, think of it as a train car. You've got your load, your loading station, that's your soil. You've got your barge, that's your carrier, and then you have your end user where the barge goes to the flour mill, and that's the deer. The plant is just transferring nutrients from the soil. That's all it's doing. And so that's a tough one, because deer will use mineral in some places and deer just won't others. If they don't, that means they're getting what they're needing. We put out mineral. I'm this way too. We put out mineral wanting to get trail camera pictures when our sole goal, it needs to be management of the whitetails. Yes, mineral is a powerful tool getting pictures and things of that nature. But if they're not hitting it, don't think that's a bad thing. Look at it as, hey, they're getting what they're not deficient in what they're lacking.
They're not needing to come to a supplemental source of it because they're getting enough of it somewhere else.
Exactly.
Wild animals are far better at identifying what it is that they need than we are. So if they're not using it,
if a deer is spending 30 minutes at your mineral site a day, you got problems. That's what I try to start out as. Man, what is that? Why does that deer need to eat so much to get what that animal thinks it needs nutrient wise? That's what I lay awake at night thinking about. But
no, that makes a lot of sense. Sticking with that kind of side of things, do you have a preferred food plot size? And do you prefer till or no till for your food plot?
So size, not really. I'm beginning to like the larger the better, because I have seen a lot of interesting things in regards to deer social stress. Social in regards to the number of other deer. If you got a 1 acre plot and you've got a 4-year-old deer out there that, man, that deer, I want to see him in another year type thing. And you have, just a bully buck come in, 4-year-old's leaving, he's gone, he's out. He wants nothing to do with that. You got a larger plot, he can go to the other end of the plot, eat, feel safer, not feel so pressured. Not always, but that's what I've kind of seen. And then I design those plots where if he leaves, go the other end of the plot, he's got to come by my stand. And do I till or no till? Most of my food plots are tilled. Now I do a lot of my row crop is no till. The reason I don't, and I say this as humbly as possible, the reason I don't no till my food plots is because I don't have equipment small enough to do that. I'm mostly working with my, planters, my drills, tractors, sprayers, so on and so forth. I'm working in large row crop operation. I'm not sponsored by a food plot drill company. I'm not interested right now in going and dropping 25 grand on a food plot drill when I can, come in and work the plot and plant it. Am I working towards being able to get my plots big enough to use my farm, my row crop equipment in? Yeah, but as time grows, we all know row crop equipment grows as well too. So it's kind of fighting an uphill battle.
Right. So you touched on it a little bit with the minerals. Do you do any supplemental feeding as well, or are you just trying to do it through food plots?
Yeah, so supplemental feeding is legal here. I do supplemental feed. I try to run a year-round feed program. It's not intense. It's not crazy, but I'm trying to get nutrition, especially components to fight EHD. I'm trying to get as many components possible into the deer as I can. Nutrition through food plots, nutrition through mineral, nutrition through supplemental feed. I do believe it's a useful tool. It's obviously not legal everywhere, but if you can use it, I think it's a very, if you're just dumping corn in a feeder, you're feeding deer, you're attracting deer. But if you can put a product in, there's a couple different companies out there that are really honing in on the nutritional side of things in regards to supplemental feed. If you can do that as well. I also mix a little bit of mineral in with my feed all the time as well. It's just one more way to get nutrition into that animal to honestly try to make them as healthy as possible.
Right. We'll do one more question. I know you're dealing with some storms there today, and
yeah.
Connection's not as great as we would like it to be, but want to try to wrap up one more question. And it's kind of, we'll ask two questions together. First of all, I know a big part of the way that you lay the farm out, the way that you hunt the farm, is your stand access, and where you're a lot more deliberate in that than some folks are. And then the piggyback question on that is, how do you change that approach, or do you, when you're hunting timber versus field, which obviously you don't have a lot of timber, so it's not talking big timber for you necessarily, but even just field edge is easy, but when you're not right on the edge, how is that strategy changing?
Yeah, field edge is a blessing and a curse, because it's the only way in and the only way out. And that's the same line of travel the deer are going to take. So getting out on a field edge, you're just walking a deer trail. It's at this point anymore. I used to have stands that I thought I could get away with, getting in, getting out. If I get in, I'm fine. Probably going to shoot a deer. So getting out isn't an issue. Well, we all know that that's not how hunting works. So anymore, I walked a place yesterday shed hunting that I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, if I could have a stand in here, it would be a breeze. I'd whack a great deer, no problem. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you idiot, you can't get into this thing. You absolutely cannot get into this location without bumping deer. So I gotta keep my hunting straight. It's actually, it's where I shot Omega, which it's currently my biggest deer, 184. I'm looking at him right now, but it's a location. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, and keeping the core sanctuary what it is, but then using terrain, things of that nature. A buck is using terrain in his favor. So how can you use terrain in your favor as well? How do you hunt a buck? You think like a buck, a mature buck, if that's what your goal is, how you may have this monstrous trail on in this one portion of the field, but if the wind is blowing predominantly, say it's a predominant wind that's blowing the wind a different direction, 99 times out of 10, that buck is going to come on that little, almost nothing trail on the downwind side of the field to get that in his favor from the get-go. And guys, I know this to be true because I've watched it take place over and over again. With friends, myself, occasionally it still happens. I'll be sitting in a stand thinking I'm in the driver's seat, and I don't see, I saw this one time where I was glassing up on a ridge, had a buddy hunting in the field, and was just watching with my spotting scope from about a half mile away. Like, I'm going to watch this all play out. This is going to be a ton of fun. He's sitting in his stand. This buck comes in, there's 15 deer out in the field, some young bucks, decent bucks, chasing does. Does are out there doing their thing. And I'm like, man, it's going to happen. And the wind was in his favor. The wind was blowing from the deer to him. It was great. Dude, this mature buck, great deer, comes on this little tiny, literally nothing trail on the downwind side of this field, just hooks all the way around and catches him. Catches his scent, and away, he sneaks off, doesn't run off. Mature bucks, more times than not will sneak away.
Mm-hmm.
And he sneaks off. I tell my buddy, I'm like, dude, it was so close. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that buck. He's like, I didn't see
Never even knew he was there, did he?
I'm like, yeah, never knew he was there.
Yeah.
Dude, I kid you not. I think that's the case in so many hunting. Buck gonna go. Quit thinking about, that great big beat down trail that all 15 does are using 3 times a day, in the little bucks. Where's the big deer at? And it's fun to have deer in range. It's fun to get, see lots of deer. Are you there to see a lot of deer? Or are you there to shoot a big deer? Mm-hmm. That's what you really have to ask yourself. Because, I've got stand locations where I may not see a deer. I may not, but if I do, it's going to be a stud, most likely.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to deal with all 15 does walking by me at 15 yards, trying to, be like, oh man, I hope they don't wind me. Hope they don't see me. Hope they don't stick around for an hour after dark and I'm stuck up here. I don't want that. I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather see fewer deer or see them from afar and keep everything and all the cards in my deck stacked in my favor to optimize the opportunity at that buck as he's getting everything in his favor.
And that, I think we'll wrap it up there. And I think it's a really good place to stop for a couple reasons, but like you said, those big beaten down trails, and it's so easy to see them this time of year before green up. And as guys are out shed hunting, so often those are the trails that guys are walking. There's nothing using those trails that's dropping antlers. Those, and so much of this is stuff that we've heard before, and in our mind we know it, but we get caught up with so many other things. The big mature deer are not using the doe trails. Like you said, they're A, because they're not using properties the same way, but B, because when they know where those trails are, but they're running those trails 30, 40 yards downwind.
Yeah. Or in the middle of the night.
I mean, exactly.
Mature deer are some of the most adaptive creatures out there, because whitetail deer, I think, are the most hunted creatures out there on the face of the planet. I don't know of another species that's hunted like whitetail deer are by as many people as whitetail deer hunt. I'm beginning to convince that the mature bucks know what associate feeders with danger, associate trail cameras positioned wrong with danger, box blinds, tree stands. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I'm not using ladder stands hardly anymore, because I got a lot of neighbors that are using ladder stands and aren't hunting, and these bucks see these ladder stands. They catch the smell, they associate it, they move. I started positioning my cameras in ways that it's not, blaringly obvious on this post, looking him right in the face as he's walking down the middle of the trail.
Right.
Trying to be more discreet about my placement of that camera. Things of that nature, because I think everybody, if you run cameras long enough, you get this picture of, a buck, and maybe it's on, it's on a quick burst or time lapse or whatever it might be. If you got it on a multi-shot, he'll be coming down the trail, walking, and then boom, he's looking at that camera like, oh my gosh. And you may not get that deer's picture again. So, and that's something I'm really, I've been doing a lot of research, reading what other people say and do, getting that camera in a position to where it's not so blaringly obvious to the deer that, hey, I'm watching you type thing. Yep. Because everyone's got cameras on feeders. Everyone's got cameras on big trails, things of that nature, scrapes, and that's fine. You'll get pictures of deer that way. But, I guess trying to get through to that really, that 6.5-year-old buck that has seen absolutely everything in the woods there is to see. How can I, it's like, previous question, how can I outsmart this buck at his own game? How can I get his picture? How can I get the intel on him to figure out better how to hunt him without him knowing that I'm hunting him? Because if he knows he's being hunted, you're hunting the hardest animal there is to hunt. Because safety is one. That's absolutely number one. If he does not feel safe, chances are you are not going to kill that deer. If he feels safe, dude, you cannot be in a better position to kill a mature buck.
Okay, so I lied, because we're not going to end the podcast right here, because now we're pulling a string, and I want to kind of keep going with it, because since I've been at SPYPOINT, my strategy with trail cameras has changed drastically.
So the podcast, you did Working Class Bow Hunters. You have the podcast with Working Class Bow Hunters guys, and you talked about thinking about the laser of the trail laser, whatever it is,
the sensor,
the sensor in it looking like a disc, the way it's positioned. And I was like, what? I didn't know that. It's amazing, and so yeah, I mean, dude, if you got tips, ideas on the camera side of things, throw them at me, because I now become part of the audience, because I don't, I'm trying to figure out how can I get intel, like I said, on these bucks, without these bucks knowing I'm hunting them.
So cell cams are great, because we don't have to go pull cards, but there's still camera maintenance that has to take place. Yeah. And from a tree stand, I've started thinking of trail cameras as tree stands. I want to get to those locations with as little disruption as possible, as often as possible. And again, for me, I don't need 1,000 pictures of bucks from July to October. That's not what because the way I'm going to hunt any property is put me in proximity to the does, and the likelihood of seeing a buck goes up drastically. Part of it's because of the size of the properties we hunt, part of because it's as broken up around here as it is. But I've very much gone to trail cameras in locations to figure out how does are using the property. They're more forgiving, and bucks are still going to transition through those areas. If I get a couple, we had just a fantastic, and I literally would have been in the tree stand the one night, and my oldest boy ended up being sick, so I couldn't be out that night. 150-inch 8-point, just an absolutely gorgeous deer. And it was on that same property that I killed that deer off of 2 years ago. And he would show up on that camera once a month. You could almost set your clock by it. Every 30 days, he would cycle through and use an odd trail, but by and large, still where the does were using it. But that's enough. I just need to know, again, we're kind of talking about how do you get into your tree stand. Is he alive, and is he there? Where we're at, you're probably going to see quality deer when you hunt, even if it's not a deer that you've seen regularly. So I'm just trying to put myself in a high likelihood situation. So knowing that, all I want to know from my trail cameras going into the fall, how can I minimize my disruption to the does? Because if I blow the does out trying to get to my stand, he may come from another direction, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the hunt's over, but it certainly doesn't help. So the likelihood of me seeing a doe on a hunt, way higher than a buck, any hunt. Sure. So I'm using the trail cameras to educate me in that regard. And then, like I said, all those things like changing the angle and getting, I'm a lot of times trying to shoot from back under cover. You'll see a lot of guys talk about, and it came up on the Working Class Bow Hunter podcast, that they'll hang them high and they'll shoot them down at a specific spot. I've actually gone the other route. I've started putting cameras lower and shooting up, because I can get further away from the trail. I can still have that view, but you have a longer spectrum when you're talking about that conical flat sensor line that's going out there. You've got a longer active area if you're at a foot off the ground and shooting up than if you're 12 feet up shooting straight down. It works on a feeder, it works on a mineral site. If you know that there's a trail that he's using in a transition area and you are just trying to get pictures of that deer, great. But I'm still going to avoid that trail camera location, because if I need to go in there to swap batteries or something, I don't want to have to do that on August 15th. I would much rather be patterning those does, making a plan for how the deer, talking the Queen's English, the deer in general are using the property, to avoid to avoid contacting those deer until I'm ready to. So that I've it's completely different. Used to, we can, Indiana, you can't feed, it's baiting. So they're like, all evidence has to be gone within 30 days, or all feed has to be gone 30 days before season opens. So you'd have a lot of guys that would like set blocks in like kiddie pools and stuff. So then you could just pull a kiddie pool, or they'll feed, but they'll quit feeding 6 months ahead, and corn's all picked up or whatever. And used to do some of that, and just tried to use it as basically an inventory situation. And used to get pictures of deer, but it didn't really, again, what are you trying to get out of it? Do you want pictures of deer, or do you want to have a plan to hunt those deer come fall? And those aren't necessarily the same thing. So like I said, I've gone to low angles. I've gone to focusing on some of those doe areas just because it gives me a more complete picture.
Yeah, it's fun to check the card and have 2,500 pictures. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a ton of deer on here. But is it the picture you want? I'd rather have one great picture than 1,000 pictures of, does or little bucks or whatever it might be. Like you said, just knowing that target deer is here.
Yep. Well, and we talked about it on that Working Class Bow Hunter podcast. I mean, that 2 years ago was that year that we had that monster. I don't, back of the napkin math, I don't see how he doesn't get to 200 inches. And we had 400 pictures of that deer.
Yeah.
And a lot of daytime pictures.
Wow.
And nobody ever killed him. And he's still alive. Still alive. He made it through. Somebody else got a picture of this deer. He's alive. So he's coming. He's coming 9.5. He was 8.5 last year. He's coming 9.5 years old.
That's awesome.
To get the volume of pictures that we did, whether we killed him or not, I don't care what anybody says. That's a victory. That's just because what that tells me is, like you're talking about, the strategy we're using to hunt that property isn't pushing mature deer off. The trail camera strategy we're using for that property isn't pushing mature deer off. And we all want to hang the tag on them, but I think, and I'm as guilty as anybody, our brains to some extent we're wired to be binary. Did you kill a deer this season? No, I suck. This sucks. I'm going to give up hunting. But look at it from a larger perspective. Did you make progress on your habitat management plan? Did you find some deer that maybe from, a year or two from now, you are going to want to be taken off the property? Did you have a situation like that where you were cat and mouse with a legitimate mature whitetail that you had your chances, it just didn't come together? That's a huge, that lets you know you're doing something right, where a lot of people would give up. That's when you actually dig in and double down and say, we're on the right path here, and start to pick around the margins at just those last little things to really lock that plan together. And, there's hunters and there's killers. And I think that the hunter mindset is much more, like I said, I derive just as much pleasure from, figuring a property out and seeing quality of animal like that on cameras fairly regularly. That means something's working, and that's really fun. And that's a pursuit in and of itself that is pretty exciting. Even, frankly, if me or the guys that I can't hunt with don't kill that, the guys that I hunt with don't kill that deer, my next favorite outcome is that at 12.5, he lays down to bed some February night and never wakes up.
Yeah.
That's 3 more years of him outbreeding does. That's, every once in a while, it's really cool to see one of those deer win. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I got a deer this year. I don't know if he's alive, dude. I've hunted this deer for 4 years now. I got one series of pictures one night of him this year, October 28th, I think it was. I didn't know if he was alive up till then. One night I got 4 pictures of him and never got a picture since. I don't know where he went. I didn't find the sheds. I don't know if he's dead. I don't know if somebody shot him. I have no idea. But it's one of those things that and this is gonna sound absolutely harebrained. I'd love to shoot that deer. I really would. But part of me wants to see that deer, like you said, make it to an ripe old age, lay down, never wake up the next morning. And that's how he goes out. Just because I got so much respect for that animal. I mean, it has been a true joy just to watch him over the years endure the elements, hunting pressure, everything that's been put upon him. And he's, and he made it through to pick up his antlers, pick up those sheds and be like, this dude wore these, he fought other bucks with these. He could have been killed, by another buck. He could, and these were on his head and he carried these. Sheds are, I'd rather shed hunt than deer hunt. I really would. I absolutely adore shed hunting. And just to put that portion of the story together and that connectivity, but you said that, and that deer popped into my mind, and I'm just like, absolutely. That's if that could be the story for one deer, it's that animal, just because that's that history, that story you build, the pictures, the sheds, the visual sightings, and that deer just champed on and won.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's if there's one thing that I wish I could get non-hunters to understand about hunters, it's that portion of it. I think oftentimes, it's thought of that it's the kill that we're after. And to some extent it is, but I think for most of us, it's the process that gets us there. There's a reason that by and large, guys don't go buy other people's taxidermy. There's a reason there's no market. If it was just having big heads on the wall, you could do it a whole lot cheaper, just watching for estate auctions and putting somebody else's taxidermy on your wall. But that's just a token of the story. That's just a piece of how we got to where it's a trigger for a memory. And when it's a situation like that, when maybe you've got 15 minutes of history with that deer on the day that you hunted him. Maybe you've got 5 years of history watching that deer grow and chasing him around. But whatever the case may be, it's that story, it's that process, it's the hunt itself, as opposed to that trigger pull or that arrow release. So yeah, now we will wrap it up. So again, you can find SPYPOINT on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Just go there, search SPYPOINT Trail Cameras. Follow us on social. Obviously, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast if you got questions.
It's the best podcast you've ever listened to. Just throw that out there.
Yeah. Clearly. Josh, tell people where they can find you, and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, so the majority of my land management stuff is on the Building Whitetails on the SPYPOINT platform. Just type in Building Whitetails SPYPOINT. Videos will come up. They come out once a month. And also I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, but I never use it for political reasons. Instagram, j.pretzer.9, I think it is. And I'm on there, post a ton of land management stuff on there. And sometimes it gets wild.
Appreciate you jumping on, Josh. I know we were fighting the weather a little bit, but I think there's some really good stuff in here and hope people listen. So thank you. Good luck this spring, and hopefully spring plant 2022 goes off without a hitch.
Hopefully it's a prosperous and profitable year for every one of my not capitalistic friends. I'll put it that way.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. We'll see you down the road.
See you guys.
Bye.